Welcome, everyone, to our Tuesday night chat. I'm Kelly Wilkins from My Self Reliance. It's so good to be with you tonight. We have our special guest speaker on tonight, Candace Coughlin. Welcome, Candace. So, before we jump
Hello.
into Candace's presentation, all about food, this is March is our food month. Where last week we met together with some of our hub members and we talked about our food challenge for March. And it is getting together within your hubs to create a food storage collaboration. So maybe it's getting together with your Mylar bags and dry food. Maybe it's doing a cook up and freezing food. Maybe it's doing a canning. Or maybe it's coming along to the Nourish and Prepare retreat that Candace is running at the Lily Ponds retreat in the 20th to the 22nd of March. And so over 3 days, you're going to get to learn a whole bunch of um, food and home apothecary. I have to say it slowly. um, and herbal remedies so that you can prepare for winter and have lots of good homemade options instead of going to the store and buying the nasties that people think are healthy and not really. So um, we have also in My Self Reliance, we have some other big events happening this weekend. If you'd like to go camping with the South Coast Illawarra group run by Simone, there is a special camp happening at Ben Dealer, and it's only $6 for the whole weekend. You can book your camping site, but Simone will have you all sorted out. If you've never been camping before, don't worry, get in touch with her. There, she'll be setting up a camp kitchen and making life really fun. Bring along any skills that you have, any wares that you want to show off. If you're in business and you want to show people what you do, let Simone know so she can organize it around the schedule for the weekend, that you get some talk time and to be able to share that with the other campers there. So I know that they are going to talk more about the 72-hour kit. We had the Hills Hub run a beautiful 72-hour kit demo, and so Simone and Mids are going to talk to you about that. And while they're together, they're also will do lots of weaving. I know that's they're experts in that, and they're actually putting together a weaving retreat for Lily Ponds retreat later in the year. So lots of good fun things happening. Uh, Contact me on email, Kelly with an I, or team at myselfreliance.com.au to join our newsletter. And then that way you stay up to date every week with what's coming up. So thank you everyone for joining us. Is this your first time? Tonight, as I said, we're going to follow on the theme of food storage, but with the difference. So I'm going to introduce you to Candace. Candace has, I'm going to pin you now, Candace. Here we are, coming. Candace has been with My Self Reliance for a few years now. We've done a few workshops together. She has spoken at all of our summits, both our summits online and our summits in person in Kenthurst. So she's a wealth of knowledge. She's been running fermentation workshops. She's an expert in growing your own mushrooms, in creating your own ghee, in, as I said, herbal remedies and home apothecary needs. So, Candace, I'm going to let you take it away.
No worries. Thanks. Yeah, it's apothecary is one of the ones that always it's that tongue twister. It's like once you get it in your brain that you can't actually say it, it's then even more complicated every time. But it's something that I am definitely very fond of teaching people about what to do and how to have those different types of herbs and remedies on hand. So I am going to just share my screen. Let's hopefully get this working. Um, and how does that look, Kelly?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, excellent. So, if you were at the summit last year, I did do a presentation on this. However, I've tweaked it and added it, and you know me, I kind of just speak to what's going on. So, I will go through this presentation tonight. If you have any questions or any comments, pop them into the chat. Kelly's going to manage the chat for me because I can't necessarily see it when I see everything when I am in presentation mode. And I do have a handout that I will try and work out if I can do it in here. Otherwise, we can send it out afterwards that goes along with it. But definitely pop your questions in. I will get to them at the end, or if it's really, really urgent, just let me know. But hopefully, I can cover things off. So, tonight I want to speak a little bit about not just having a pantry store full of carbohydrates, but actually food that can nourish you and preserve your health. If you don't know
Okay, let
me,
him go again.
I am an integrative nutrition health coach. I have a passion
Hang on,
for
Candace. There's a
I do
bit of
not
fermentation.
want
A
the
lot
background
of
voice coming
frozen
through.
devices
So I
doorstep.
just need to have everyone go on mute.
He's asleep now. What are you watching?
oh, no worries.
I don't know where exactly it's coming from. Okay. No, it's still there. Um, okay, should be good now. Go for it.
No worries. Um, so just a bit about me. Sorry, I originally, as you can hear, I am not native to Australia. I came from over from Canada in the early '90s. Did a naturopathy degree. My mom is a herbalist, naturopath, and I basically grew up in a health food store and college. So that kind of living or the natural foods has been a part of my life for a very, very long time. Definitely have a passion for fermentation. As I said, my house looks a little bit more like a science lab than it does a kitchen sometimes, and it's what I love. So let's just get into this. Let me just get back to my screen. Sorry. Um, Again, any questions, pop them in the chat. So, as I said, we want to look at food and whether or not it's actually supporting your health. Lots of us in this realm of my self reliance have a fantastic pantry of stock. But let's look at it and make sure that when we are, when we are in a situation where we need to only rely on what we have in our stores, is it actually stuff that's going to fuel our body? Because quite often, what's happened over time is we've been conditioned to value quantity over quality. And I think that we really need to look at that because what you have on your shelf might be able to live indefinitely, but it won't necessarily keep you alive in the way that nature intended and keep you full and healthy. Sorry, I lost my mouse. Here we go. So, as I said, functional doesn't necessarily, or sorry, full doesn't necessarily mean functional. I love the way that when we look back at 50 years ago, and we look at our grandparents, they didn't have fridges full or pantries full of ultra processed food and 20 different cleaning products. They used salt and vinegar, sunshine, thyme, and it's built a strong immune system. It built a resilience within their bodies and within their homes and their family. So today, what we're talking about is sort of bridging what we now call ancient wisdom, and it was really only 50 years ago. It was just common sense, and we've sort of lost that over the last couple of generations. And as we say in our community here, it's something that we really need to come back to. And we may not have had parents that have been able to teach us all of these skills. So that's what we were doing here as a community, to try and reintroduce some of the traditional ways that we have lived, and how we can maintain that or continue that in our lives now. As I said, lasting isn't the same as living. So let's look at, I guess, we know what the problem is. So what went wrong and what can we do about it? We will go into a little bit, but it's more than just the foods that I want to talk about. So the foods that are in our pantries or in our fridges or freezers, but also looking at what we have under our cupboards, what we're using for cleaning, what we're using for body care, all of our synthetic fragrances, our body lotions, and all of the different detergents that we use add a toxic load to our body. And our liver and our microbiome don't care where the chemicals come from. They all end up in the same place. They all end up in our detox pathways. And so when we talk about preserving health, we're not just talking about what we eat, but what we breathe, what we touch, and definitely and then through all of that, what we absorb into our system. So I'd love you to just think about one thing potentially in your cupboards, in your pantry, that might not be serving your health right now. And one thing that you might be able to swap out for a more natural option. I think that when we come into and we hear some of these talks, or we come into the different networks and the worlds or these hubs, and if you're new to sort of this type of lifestyle, it can seem a little bit overwhelming. And we're not saying, drop everything and knock everything out of your pantry, knock everything out of your cupboards and start from scratch, because it's unrealistic potentially for most people. But if we swap one thing out, one thing a week, like we were talking about, what's one challenge that you could do this week or this month with regards to food, or with regards to what we're talking about, then slowly and surely we can actually get there and have those reserves. I guess when we talk about different types of preserving, we want to talk about not just not just holding on to calories, right? We want to look at retaining the nutrients. We want to look at maintaining the vitality, the flavor, and all of the different things that go along with living food. So, of course, I'm going to start here with my very favorite. So fermentation being my first love. A few of you have been to my fermentation workshops, and it doesn't really need to be complicated. I think a lot of what we put out there, what's out there on the internet, makes it really seem really tricky, really scary. And everything that I come back to is basically, you don't need a lot. And to me, this is how food really becomes medicine in medicine in our homes. We're looking at capturing those friendly bacteria, so the lactobacillus and other bacteria that can transform the carbohydrates into acids and beneficial compounds in the food as they preserve it. And quite often, fermentation can enhance the food from a nutritional level, from vitamin C and B vitamins, enzymes. They can all increase through fermentation, in addition to those beneficial bacterias that also then can go in, and they don't necessarily repopulate your gut microbiome. A lot of them are what's called transient. And so just a little bit every day or a little bit every couple days, and I'm talking about like a teaspoon to a tablespoon of a ferment, can really help support your microbiome. And when we support our microbiome, we are supporting more than just our digestion or our gut health. Our microbiome, and I could talk for hours on this, but basically it helps with our immune system. It helps with our mood. There's a vagus nerve that runs from your digestive system up into the brain, and it's a two-way communication. So there's lots of ways that your gut health and your microbiome affects the rest of what is going on in your body. And as I said, you don't need all the fancy fermentation equipment. You can have a reused glass jar. You can have some salt and some water and your produce, and that is all that you need to get fermenting. So you can start with something like a cabbage or a sauerkraut, or just green beans. Carrots and green beans are one of my very favorite things to do. Or even just garlic. Instead of buying your garlic, the already crushed garlic you have at a store, you can make that at home, and then have that as you're using that for cooking or in salad dressings or however you're using it. But you don't have all of the different nasty preservatives and fillers and things that go on when you are buying things that way. So I don't know if you want to pop in the chat. What is one thing that you've ever wanted to preserve from like a fermentation style? One thing that you have tried and you love? I'd just love to know what I guess your favorite ones are. And then after preserving, one of my other favorite ways of or after fermentation, one of my other favorite ways of preserving is through dehydrating or drying. It's one of the oldest methods that we have, and it's really quite one of the simplest and most sustainable ways to preserve food. It's basically removing moisture, and that's the one thing that causes a lot of spoilage, and it keeps nutrients and flavor and color. And you can dry herbs through obviously using a dehydrator or even just your oven on really low. If you're lucky enough to have a freeze dryer, that is absolutely amazing. I've been asking Santa for many years, but I must be on the naughty list because it hasn't arrived yet on Christmas Day. But anyway, trying to dry things like herbs like lemon balm or mint or rosemary, they'll last for months. And they make really beautiful teas and rubs. And, you know, in the middle of winter, when you open up that jar of freshly preserved herbs, it just smells like summer. And it's just, I don't know, one of the most amazing ways that I think that you can add nutrients to all your different meals. So a little sprinkle of dried herbs and seasoning is what I'm talking about as a starting point. You can then go to, you know, preserving or drying more food, like your basic stock for your soups and stews fruits and all sorts of vegetables as well. So lots of different ways that we can dry things, and especially freeze dry these days, which are just amazing ways to preserve those nutrients. And one of the things that, as I click on my slide, is what I love to do is use some of the things. So, for example, I make a fire cider, which people love, which is a fermented herbal tonic that you use by putting all sorts of things: horseradish, your citrus, your garlic, your honey, um, sorry, before you put your honey in, all of your different types of immune herbs, if you want to put those in. And then you preserve that in apple cider vinegar, and you let that sit for about 3 months. You strain that out, and then you've got a beautiful tonic that I add then my raw honey to. From that, what I do is with those preserved bits that are left over that I have from fermented or that I've preserved, that waste is I dry that out and then I powder it, and then I just use that as a seasoning. So it's actually not wasting anything, and I'm still getting the use out of those things as well. So definitely look at some drying ways of preservation. A couple of the other things is that that are kind of the more modern ways that we use preservation these days is of course freezing. So when you have access to a freezer or a great big freezer, it's amazing. But you know, freezing basically pauses nature. And when it's done well, you can retain up to 95% of the nutrients. So blanching your veggies, for example, before you freeze them has a great way of increasing that nutrient load when we freeze. Of course, it's perfect for any kinds of soups and broths and herbs and leftovers. So it does rely on having power, of course, and having the freezer space, but it is one way that I love to preserve some of my food. Now, pickling is another way, and that is different from fermentation in that it's using vinegar and or salt, well, both usually, to preserve the produce. It really helps to keep a lot of it vibrant when you ferment pickles. For example, it goes really quite cloudy. I mean, I love pickled cucumbers, even more so than fermented cucumbers, because it just tends to hold the crunch a little bit better. So it's going to depend on your taste preferences, but there's a place for everything in preserving. So adding the vinegar has lots of beneficial aspects to your digestion. It can help you to regulate your blood sugar. And I just think it holds a space, and it can be then preserved a little bit longer and not necessarily in a fridge as well, especially when you get to doing your canning. Another way of preserving food is through curing. Here, obviously, this is a preserving a fish that way. Traditionally, they used to do that, but also just things as simple as those herbs I was talking about, adding your herbs to salt and making a herb salt. Any of the curing basically is drawing out the moisture and just really deepening the flavor. Preserved lemons are a fabulous way of preserving lemons. And then you are basically just using a little bit of that. It is I guess, an act of slow food mindfulness, I'd say, because curing does take a bit of time. I was speaking about canning before when I was talking about pickling, but canning has had a bad reputation about killing nutrients, but it retains your fiber, retains minerals, and some things actually can be boosted. So, for example, antioxidants like lycopene. When you can tomatoes and you have a cooked tomato, it actually boosts the lycopene compared to when you have a raw tomato. So there's different ways and different benefits, and having some things shelf stable is just, without having to have the power of a refrigerator or a freezer, I think is very, very important to food security. And one of the best things that I love doing now is making some kind of ready to go meals. So not just having your tomatoes and your sauces and your different things canned as an individual item. I think they're great because then you can use them to make meals, but actually having ready to go meals, canned soups and stews and things like that, so that you're not relying on getting home from work or having a bad day and just going, I don't have anything on the table, we're just going to get takeaway. If you're lucky enough to do that, Mount Victoria doesn't have very many options, but relying on having that convenience as well as having the nutrient dense foods. So canning whole meals is definitely a way that I'm going a lot more this year for sure. So, as I said, in addition to the food, we want to look at sort of that food is medicine, and then expanding it a little bit more into different ways that we can have a home, I guess, a home apothecary or a home herbal medicine cabinet, as well as, I guess, the different cleaners that we were talking about, or different ways that you can make soaps and balms and spreads. So, a couple of things, that are really, really easy to start with are things like garlic and honey. So that is one way that you can add, beautiful medicine, but from herbs. It is used for any kinds of colds and flus, and um, if you're feeling down or a little bit out of sorts, you can just use it as a medicine, in the sense that you're taking a little bit of garlic or a little bit of the garlic honey on a daily basis. Or we'll talk about things like elderberry syrup and stuff. But you can also just add those things to your everyday when it's coming into kind of cold and flu seasons, and making salad dressings out of them, or sauces that you drizzle over your baked veggies and things like that once they're done. And it's just adding that little bit of healing or home culinary nutrition and herbal medicine into your absolutely every day. So think about things like simple syrups or tea blends. Those are just different ways of doing it, but your spices and your herbs are definitely another way of adding to that every day of nutrition. We talk about our cleaner things that we're using on our body. So definitely low-tox is less stress on your body. When we look at all the cleaning ingredients that are in most of our beauty products, and or even just your shampoos, your lotions, your sunscreens, your anything that you're cleaning with, those little exposures to that from each product that you touch or you put on your skin builds up, as we know. So looking at making sure that we're talking about having some of the cleaner things, what can you replace in your everyday, and make it a little bit easier on your overall toxic load on your system. So vinegar and bicarb for as a cleaner. Olive oil, beeswax, and some essential oils can become your balms and moisturizers. One of the things that I am doing all the time now is using tallow. So tallow being the fat from processing beef, and using that as the fat in any kind of body care lotion or soap or different products that you can use on your skin. Tallow is amazing. It's very close to the oils in our skin, and it's really healing, and it's a waste product. So get your hands on some tallow, or get your hands on some suet or some beef fat, and then we can render it down. That might be one other thing that we can do as a workshop one evening to look at tallow. So now that we've sort of talked about different ways, different choices, and how they actually, I guess, affect your body's biology, and why I guess science behind it. I'm just going to touch on this a bit. I'm not going to go into a lot of depth. We don't have a lot of time, but I just want to touch on it basically. So you have that why behind why we're trying to do, or why we're trying to swap out some of these things. So again, food isn't just calories, it is communication. Every meal tells your body, whether it's needs to heal, or it's to repair, or store fat, or create inflammation. And believe it or not, inflammation can be good for you, just not when it's chronic. We want to preserve these nutrient dense foods so that we're providing positive, powerful signals back into our body when we are eating, or when we are looking at the herbal or body care that we are talking about. So when we look at food, we want to talk about sort of nutrient dense food. I was talking about sort of just calories over nutrients, or nutrients over calories. So this is a slide, and you can have a look on the different things, but basically every bite that we are taking, we want to try and get the most vitamins and minerals and enzymes out of it. So looking at those nutrient dense foods, so your fermented foods, your dried foods, how much can they hold from a nutrient density point of view? And I'm not going to say that you're going to be eating like 100% nutrient dense all the time, and that there's no room for convenience or no room for anything like that. We're just starting to try and bring these foods into our body and have them as I guess a staple, rather than just having them as a once in a while. So I talked about fermentation, and when I talk about fermentation, I am coming back to fermentation being the core, or the way to really help our gut microbiome. I look at the microbiome as a garden. You look at the Amazon rainforest, right? You've got all of these different plants and animals all working together. When we look at that compared to a monocropped field, we can see that the monocrop field needs a lot of, I don't know, pesticides, herbicides, lots of help with retaining water, lots of help doing what it needs to do. When we look at our rainforest, and it's got everything working in symbiosis with one another, and it's all contributing, that's the microbiome that we are looking for. That is the terrain that really helps support the rest of our health in our body. And as I said, when we have that diversity in our microbiome, we've got lots of different microbes, lots of different bacterias and yeasts and everything growing and working in harmony. What happens is that then proliferates throughout the rest of our body systems. How do we get that diverse microbiome? We get that through a diversity of the food we eat. So lots of different types of foods, and different types of fibers, for example, will contribute to having a diverse and a strong, robust microbiome. And that is very ideal. When we look at I guess it's the same thing. We look here, we look at shelf life and life force. Both can be preserved. You look at 2-minute noodles, for example, sitting in your pantry, or you look at some lentils sitting in your pantry. Which one, when you actually eat it, is going to help you to have that diversity and have that resilience in what it is doing for your body. When we have a look at this slide here, I guess it just goes to show you that a lot of the foods that we eat can have multiple purposes. So having things like lemon juice or coconut oil, apple cider vinegar, baking soda, these kinds of things in our homes then can help us from everything from our food and what we're making in our food, but it also can help us with our body care. It also can help us with our home care. So having multiple purposes when you are looking at stocking up your pantry. So those are just a few examples, and I do have a list. So I will share that with Kelly, and we will put that out there of sort of your pantry staples and what would be good to have in your pantry for multi-purposes. And again, then when we look at preserving food, I always come back to community and connection. So look at it not like you have to do it all on your own. That's why we're forming these hubs. That's why we do things like the workshops and the retreats and the different skills days, because we're wanting to get people together. So we don't all have to do everything. And in doing that, one person can be the soap expert, and one person can be the fermentation expert, and one person can be the meat or the preserving on the dehydrating side, and then coming together as community, coming together to share meals and things like that has incredible health benefits beyond what just the food is that we are putting in our body. And of course, together we thrive. I think that when we look at the other things that we want to talk about is that we want to really try and nourish not just, I guess, our body. We want to nourish our souls. We want to nourish our heart and our love and our connection. And again, that comes back to the community that we have there. So definitely ferment, grow, and share, and yeah, let's do this thing together. And that's it, Kelly.
Beautiful.
So if you have any questions.
Yeah, we do have a few questions, Candace, but I want to just thank Candace for amazing lot of knowledge that has come out of your presentation, and we would love you to come along and enjoy the Nourish and Prepare retreat. Do you want to just say a little bit more about the retreat coming up, Candace, and what people can expect to learn?
Yeah, for sure. So we are up at Lily Ponds. We are going to do, in addition to the beautiful, if you come and stay for the weekend, you can come and stay on site. We've got a few spots left for coming to stay on site. Otherwise, you can just come in for the day. It is a little ways, but you could stay in, I guess, Newcastle, or is it Gloucester that's closest to you?
Yeah, there's a few spots around, but really the opportunity is to have a retreat and enjoy the
Yeah,
camping
absolutely.
accommodation. So yeah, so you could do it either way.
And I think that actually immerses you in it, right, Kelly? Like it brings you in. You're there for the whole weekend. So definitely jump on that and grab some of those spots. But for the weekend, I'm going to be doing 3 different different workshops. I will be doing a fermentation workshop. I will be doing a herbal care. So we're going to look at making some balms, some salves, some different lotions and things like that from body care and home care. And then on the Sunday, we will be doing a home apothecary. So looking at different types of remedies that you can start having in your toolkit, especially as we are starting to move into winter. And you will be not just watching me do them, you'll be doing them yourselves. You're going to be making them yourselves and taking everything away that you make on the weekend. If you've been to any of my workshops before, these are a little bit expanded on those. So because we are there for a whole weekend, if you can't come for the whole weekend, you can come for just the Saturday or the Sunday. But I really encourage you to come and stay and get in there straight away so that you don't miss out on one of those spots.
Yes. Now, if you have listened to everything that Candace has said and thought to yourself, well, I would love to come to her retreat, then if you jump on the website, check out the details on the website www.myselfreliance.com.au, and make a what's it called? Booking. Thank you. The word booking within the next 24 hours, and you will get $150 off the price. So we're giving you that discount to you for being on tonight and hearing it directly. If you want to do a payment plan, you can jump on a payment plan. You can send me a text or a email and jump on that. We're also opening up dates in May. So if you can't make the March dates, the 20th to the 22nd of March, we're also opening up the 1st to the 3rd of May as well at Lily Pond's Retreat. So keep that in mind. Beautiful. Now let's jump into some of our questions. I was asking about tallow, and we have two tallow questions. When you are doing a wet tallow, do you have to be mindful about mold forming over time compared to a dry tallow? Is this a true statement? And also, where do you get your tallow from? Is it just the meat that you're eating, or do you actually go to the butcher and purchase tallow, like the fat? Tell us more about that.
Yep, sure. So I purchased the beef fat. So you can get a couple different types direct from. I'm lucky enough to have a next door neighbor who is a cattle farmer, so I've got my hands up there to grab that. But you can go to your butcher and ask them. They will often be able to source it for you. There's a couple of different ways. The suet is the beef fat that is around the organ meat, which is the best or the prime beef fat to use. But you can use the other external fat as well. When you get the fat from the butcher, you want to trim as much of the meat and cartilage or whatever is left on there off as possible. You can potentially ask your butcher to grind it, and they put it through a grinder and it comes to you in little curds. But you don't necessarily have to do that. I just cut it up really small and then use it in my slow cooker. So I don't, unless you eat a lot of meat, you would probably have to source the fat as a separate thing, just trimming off a little bit at a time. I mean, it's going to take you quite a while. You could do that and just store it in the freezer. So trim whatever fat you have, store it in the freezer. When you get a bag of the fat, you could then render that down. When we talk about rendering, that's the different way that we are heating the fat to basically melt it. And what we're trying to do is remove the impurities. And by impurities, I don't mean toxins or bad things, I'm talking about basically any of the muscle or cartilage or anything that's left on it. The two ways of doing that is a wet method and a dry method. The wet method, when you have your fat, you add salt and water, and then you cook it down, and then you let it all melt together, and strain off any of that. The first time you do it, strain off any of the fat or any of the the meat and extra products, and then you set that the oil that's left over, so your fat that's been melted with the water and salt in it, in a fridge. Let it solidify, and what will happen is the water will separate and the fat will float on the top. You then take that out, tip the water out, do it all again a few times. I personally do a wet render method, and the reason I do that is because I'm using it a lot for soaps and skincare and things that I want to put on my face, and it helps to remove a lot of the beefy smell more over than the dry render method. You just need to be very careful that in your last, and I would render it up 2 or 3 times usually. And as you do that, you will be scraping off some of the impurities. The last render that I do before I jar it up, I don't add any water. So what I basically do then with that last one is I scrape off all the impurities, get rid of the water. Then I cook it down, have the lid off, and any of the water that potentially may be left in there is going to evaporate. And then I pour it into my jars and I seal it up that way. And I don't have any issues with mold. If you were worried, you could freeze it. But if the goal, or keep it in the fridge, that if the goal is for shelf stable, I just do that as my last render after I've wet rendered.
That's very comprehensive. Thank you, Candace. Okay,
You're welcome.
Akiko asked, she's attended your workshop, but she's worried about mold growing. What is she doing wrong? How can she avoid mold starting to grow on her fermented veggies?
Yeah, so when you're fermenting, the biggest thing is making sure that everything stays under the brine. So making sure everything is under that water level. So when you pack your fermented vegetables into a jar, the best way to do it is to use another small jar or a weight or something that keeps everything down. So you might not have enough brine, Akiko, in your vegetable ferments. If you were just using a cabbage leaf on top, which is what I teach as a very basic way of doing it, that cabbage leaf on top could get mold on it, but then you're discarding that and everything else should still be under the brine. So the biggest thing is making sure it's under the brine and making sure that your salt content is high enough. So we want to make sure we have at least a 2 to 3% salt ratio. Those are the two things that help combat the mold.
Very cool.
But again, any photos, send me some photos and I'll have a look and and I can help you out.
Troubleshoot. Awesome.
Yeah.
Emma and Andrew have their hand up. I'll come to you guys. Come off mute.
Yeah, it's just in regards to good day, Candace. How you going?
Hello.
Just in regards to the fermented foods, is there such a thing as having like too much fermented foods, and when can it cause issues? If you haven't had it before, would you just like have a big mouthful of it suddenly?
Yeah. So there's my suggestion is, if you've never had and I'm talking about homemade fermented foods, even if you've had store-bought fermented foods don't have nearly the amount of beneficial bacteria and microbes in it as homemade. So let's start there. Say you've had no fermented foods at all. Even if you're starting with store-bought, and when I talk about store-bought, it needs to be refrigerated. So any of your, say, your sauerkraut that you're going to buy that's in the pickle and olive section on the supermarket shelves, they are no longer they no longer have beneficial bacteria because they have been canned and pressure canned and heat treated to make them shelf stable. So if you're going to buy fermented foods from the store, make sure they are in the refrigerated section. They need to say raw or unpasteurized. So that's a start from there. Then if you're going to homemade fermented foods, I honestly, a teaspoon of sauerkraut, a teaspoon of kefir, or like an ounce, like 30 ml of kombucha to start, if you've never had them before, is a lot. So I would actually start really small. I would start with a teaspoon a day, 1 teaspoon one day. The next day, maybe 1 teaspoon at breakfast of something, 1 teaspoon in the afternoon of something. Then the next day, if you're still good, go to a tablespoon and sort of build up your resilience that way. Quite often, like the microbes are going in, your good microbes that are going in, and they are literally going to clean house, right? Literally clean house. They are going to push out all of the different things that are going on in your system. And if you go too hard, too fast, you can have what's called a healing crisis. You can have, well, what you can have an overactive bowel, and you could be sitting on the toilet for quite a while. So I would definitely start slow and just add it and see how you go. If you are really sensitive to histamines, so if you quite often have a really bad histamine reaction, you need to be careful as well. So start slow and just add a little bit and then see how you go. But honestly, a tablespoon in a day of a fermented food is enough to carry you for 3 or 4 days. You're using the fermented foods as I guess, as a medicine, as an additive, or as a condiment. You're not eating a whole jar or a bowl of sauerkraut, even if you like it, because you can, but you might have dangerous reactions that way.
Beautiful. Does that answer your question, Andrew? Emma, do you have any other question while you're there? You're good. Okay. Lovely. All right. We have Farmer Josh has a couple of questions. Are you able to come off mute?
Yes, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Yep.
Perfect.
Great. All right. So, a few questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, with the apple cider vinegar, where you mentioned putting the herbs in, how long do the herbs have to be left to ferment in the apple cider vinegar for?
It can depend on what you're putting in there. So if it's a woody herb, like say, if you're putting just in a herb like a rosemary or something like that, where it's actually strong, like a more woody or fibrous, I would probably leave it for at least 3 to 4 weeks. Your softer herbs, so say your oregano or your, if your thyme, and you're not using all of the wood, you could probably get away with a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, to help extract that out. When you're using the apple cider vinegar, you're not really fermenting. You're actually just using the vinegar as a mechanism, and the acids to draw all of the nutrients and all of the different components out of those herbs. When I do my fire cider, for example, I would do it for a minimum of 6 weeks up to 3 months.
All right. That makes sense. Thank you. And another question I had was, you mentioned about preserving the fish in salt. So I grow a lot of fish, and it'd be good to be able to preserve them in salt. So could you sort of explain a bit about how that's done?
Yeah, so that's something I actually haven't done it myself. So it's just one form of way of curing and preserving. So it's probably my least knowledgeable area, to be honest. So I probably can't tell you exactly how to do it. It's just more that I was saying it is a way of doing it, but it is something I'd like to learn. So other people out there, if there is anybody that does salt preserving of meat, I would also love to learn a little bit more of that myself. So unfortunately, I can't help you on that one.
Yes, that's all good. Thank you. Now, just my last question, if you don't mind, is also to do with the salt. So, I know that salt's very good for preserving. I've heard that pool salt is very pure salt. So, have you had any experiences that, can pool salt be used in preserving?
I have not. I would need to, I guess it would depend on what is in, like, what is the actual chemical components of pool salt. So when I use any salts, I just always use a Himalayan salt or a Celtic sea salt or a sea salt that way, something that's non-iodized. I have not used any of the commercial type of salts. I would need to look into what is in it because it might not necessarily I would need to look at what is in the actual ingredients of that to be able to answer.
Yes. All right. Thanks very much.
No worries.
Beautiful. I think that has anyone got a question and hasn't been able to ask their question?
I'm just looking at the chat.
Yes.
So a couple of things. So eggs, we can, you can preserve eggs. You can use lime and water to preserve eggs. So it's called water glassing. So that is a great way to preserve eggs in their whole egg form, like in their shell form, in their whole egg form. Other than freezing, you can freeze eggs. I always scramble my eggs before I freeze them. I find it just works better than, and you can do a 1 egg in a ice cube tray so that you know the actual sizes, and of course dehydrating and drying. But water glassing eggs is one thing that I could teach on how to do that as well. Preserving chilies is amazing. I make so much chili sauce because I love chilies. Fermented chili sauce is great. And you can add so many different things into with the chilies. So I don't just do straight chilies. I have, sweet potato or pumpkin and apples, and you could do mango. You could do all sorts of different things. So again, you're adding a whole bunch of different nutrients to give those diversity and get those different bacteria going. And then you're using it just as a little bit. You have a little bit of fermented hot sauce added onto your vegetables or your sandwich or your salad or something, and you are getting a hit load of beneficial bacteria that way.
We go through chili oil in our house, like the not chili jam. It's
Yeah, it's like chili crisp or chili oil where they've added it. So, and that's a great way of doing it. It doesn't have any microbial benefits, but it is definitely a way to preserve chilies. And I've done that as well because it's just a different thing. So sometimes I don't want like a fermented sauce. I just want like that crunchy chili oil, which has got garlic in it. And again, it's got all your different herbs. You can add turmeric to it. You could add, your cumin. You could add all of different types of seasonings. And then you're using that chili oil as you're drizzling that on and you're getting the hit of all of those things as well. And especially if you make your own chili oil, Kelly, because a lot of the chili oil that you buy in the store is made with canola oil or your seed oils. So is quite high in the omega-6 fatty acids. So if you make it yourself, it's even better.
Oh, I wonder if we can put that on the list for May.
Yeah,
That sounds so good.
Doesn't it? That.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that's quite easy to do. We can add it in.
Perfect.
Yes, please.
Any other questions?
Candace, I have a huge chili tree at the moment. Should I save my chilies, like dry them for then? Would that be helpful?
You can dry them. If we're fermenting them, you would want to freeze some.
Freeze some. Okay.
If we are going to use them for chili crisp, yes, let's dry them.
Okay. All right. I'll do a bit of both. Perfect. Cool. Some great questions, guys. Just check the chat if there's any other questions. Can you put in the chat, Candace, how people can contact you?
Sure.
And also, Emma, do you want to comment on the Blue Mountains Hub get together where you meet Candace in person?
Yes, so we're planning our very first MSR Blue Mountains breakfast on Friday, the 27th of March. Candace has done great work in advertising it on various platforms, and we've had a huge response. Lots of lovely people were on tonight or are on tonight from the Blue Mountains, hoping that you can make the breakfast between 8 and 9 a.m. Friday, the 27th of March at Ben's Cafe in Benang Street, Lawson. Would love to meet you there. Thanks.
Okay. So
And you get to meet Candace in person.
So exciting. No, but yeah, and if you can't, definitely jump on to the Telegram. That is where we are sharing everything. Everybody that's on here tonight that would have been in contact with me, you can reach out via Messenger and stuff as well. And these are all my different contact details. So on Facebook or Instagram, I'm just at Candace Coughlin with an A, so CANDACE, and Coughlin, COUGHLAN. Wildhealthhub.com is my website. Candace.coughlin at gmail.com, and there is my phone number.
beautiful. Now, I got one more question from Farmer Josh.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Right, so this question which I thought of, so a few years ago, this was January 2023, I had a lot of tomatoes I was growing at the time, cherry tomatoes, and I had no idea how to preserve them, so I put them in a jar with vinegar. And since then, they seem to have gone a bit cloudy, and I'm not sure if they're still okay or not.
So it's hard because when you've got like tomatoes, for example, they've got a lot of moisture, so like juices and moisture in them. So and when you preserve them in vinegar straight, so they've just been on the bench in vinegar.
They've been in the cupboard. It's that you're not sure if you can see.
Yeah. So I mean, what I would do is your nose is going to be your best guide, but I would open it up outside as a precaution. And the reason that I say that is if it is gone off, like it doesn't, I can't see the mold. I can't see it well enough to see if it's moldy. But your nose is going to tell you, even with fermenting, like if something is actually off when you ferment, it smells rotten. Like it's going to make you gag, and it's not great. I've been fermenting for over 30 years, and I only once have had something not go so well. And it just got contaminated, right? So your nose is going to tell you the best way of doing it. So I would take it outside just in case, because if it does smell really bad, it's going to smell really bad. It's going to stink your house up. And just open it. It shouldn't be, because you've done it in vinegar and not a ferment, I would say it's not going to like explode or anything. Like there's not going to be pressure. When you ferment things and you have them in a sealed jar, you need to be really careful because that goes through its fermentation process, it off gases and it will build up pressure. But if it was just a straight vinegar, then it shouldn't have any kind of pressure around it. If you were worried, you could just put a tea towel over the top and open it up and smell it. If it just smells like a vinegared, tomato that you've got, if it doesn't look like it's got anything growing and moldy and horrendous in there, then I would say it would be okay to eat. That is my risk tolerance, though. If I've ever had mold on the top of a ferment, I just scrape it off a couple of centimeters down, get rid of it, and I still eat it. It might not be your risk tolerance though, right? So just look at what you're comfortable with, smell it, and let your body let you know whether or not. And then if you're going to try try a little bit and then leave it for a few days, and just make sure you don't
Right.
eat too much.
That is-
yeah, because I did a couple of them. I also did a corn, which has gone. It looks good. It's just gone a bit cloudy.
They will go cloudy.
Yeah, and then I also did it for eggplant, which is browned a bit, but it usually browns a bit anyway. So
Yeah, your eggplant is probably going to be really chewy. But
Right,
yeah, so I would do the same thing and just try them.
yeah,
But
and this so and this one that I was given by, so I didn't make it. It was made by someone else.
yeah.
And they've got a bunch of stuff in there, and they said it needed to be burped every few weeks, but I don't think it's been burped in years. So
So again, just be careful. If you're burping it, it must be that it was in a ferment rather than a vinegar. So if it's been years, it's not going to be active anymore. But again, just open it away from you when you open it.
I love that.
All right,
I love
thank
let
you.
the nose be your guide, and if you-
Absolutely. And that's the biggest thing, Kelly, is we've gone away from actually trusting ourselves and our bodies, whether it's through how we actually feel. You know, we've given our power away to doctors and the internet, and about what's wrong with us and about what's good for us. Because I can be talking about, fermented foods being really healthy, for example. But if you have a really high histamine or like a low histamine tolerance, and histamine's really reactive with you, it's not going to be the same as me. So everything needs to be treated with, everybody going out and doing a little bit of their own research, but also really tuning into their own body and into their own lives, and taking that power back.
Yeah, so good. So good. So thank you so much, Candace, for tonight. Thanks everyone for getting on. I want to just remind you that you can join as a My Self-Reliance member up until it's $59 for the year until the 30th of April. Then if you join before then, you can be grandfathered and get that at that low price. After the 1st of May, it's going to $10 a month or $99 a year for membership. And that way, next week, when we jump on, and it's for members only, then when we're doing the work within our hubs, you can be part of the hub that is closest to you, and receive all these great resources and also discounts off of our major events throughout the year. So thank you again, everyone, for jumping on. More information if you go to the website, or if you join us on our Telegram group. I will put the link of that. Find us at My Self-Reliance on Telegram, or Self-Reliance and Food Storage chat group on Telegram, and also the hubs. Lots of the links to all the different hubs there as well. So we hope to see you all next Tuesday at the same time, and look forward to catching up with you then. Hope to can come along to our retreat, and it'll be lots of fun. Thanks again, Candace.
No worries. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Good night.
Thanks, Candace. Bye, Kelly.
Good night,
Bye.
everyone. We are going to stop recording.